Okay, great. So let's see.
Are you able to see it?
I'm not able
Not,
to see it.
not yet, Carlita.
Okay, give me 1 second. It's got to be in presentation mode.
I can share if you want, Carlita. I have
No,
it.
we're good. We're good.
Okay.
All right, I'm just going to back up a few slides. There we go. Should be. Please forgive us for this technical difficulty here, but it gets a little tricky. All right, share.
Okay, so on we go. Just want to make sure that you all can hear us now. If you could please tell us if you can hear us, that'd be good. I have Aaron, Melissa, Tamla in the room. Can you hear us well?
Just unmute everyone.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
I can hear you, Tamala
Okay,
from
great.
Ascending Knowledge.
Okay, great. So
Yes.
we're gonna get going. Today is the start of our Track 3 Administrator and Program Manager, Community of Practice. I'm Norman Ruano, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Office of Illinois Works. I think I've had the opportunity to meet all of you, or if I haven't, it's good to meet you over WebEx here. With me today is Dr. Carlita Alston, who is from our PD team providing virtual support, and also Victor Castillo, who's the lead of our PD team at NIU, providing support for this event too. Melissa said that she's not able to unmute herself. Victor, can you please see if you can unmute her?
Yes, I can.
Going on to the next slide, Carlita. So for our community of practice, we're going to talk a little bit in a minute about what a community of practice is and how it operates. This one specifically was created to support Track 3 grantees, or what we call accelerator grantees. And accelerator grantees are very important for our operation because these are grantees that are in development. These are grantees that require a lot of support. Given the nature of the Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program, which is, it operates with minimum standards for a lot of areas, it operates with a lot of guidance, and it is also a very fast-paced environment. We want to make sure that our Track 3 grantees have all the support, all the necessary support for them to succeed. That's the reason why we decided to activate this community of practice. This is actually a new community of practice in our network this year. Before I go on to discuss, little more details about this community of practice and how it works, and then to focus a lot on the best practices that we want to discuss today, I want to make sure that I know who is in the room. So if you don't mind unmuting yourselves and telling us who you are, the role, the organization that you represent, the role that you have in that organization, okay?
My name's Erin Ashley, and I am with Spark 618 down in Carbondale, Illinois, in the very southern part of the state, and I am the program administrator.
Okay, great. Thank you for joining us, Aaron. Melissa, if you don't mind going on.
Going close and open. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, is this Melissa?
Yes.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Clicking off and clicking. But my name is Melissa Duffy.
And are you a program administrator? Are you with what organization again?
Eaton Career Institute.
Okay, there's a lot of background noise for someone, and we could try to reduce that noise. That would be good. Melissa, and what's your role with Eden Career Institute?
Program administrator.
Program administrator. Okay, and then we have Tamala, right? Tamala, please go ahead. I cannot hear Tamala. Is she unmuted, Victor?
She said would unmute herself, but I'll go ahead and do it.
Thank you, Victor. Good morning. My name is Tamala Hughes. I am the program administrator of Sending Knowledge Community Outreach International. We're located in Harvey, Illinois.
Okay, great. Okay, so moving on, let me just give you a little bit of background of why I decided to do this myself, and then we're going to talk about what today's expectations are, and will also be the expectations as we meet on a monthly basis. So I decided, instead of asking someone else to do this, to do it myself, because I would like to personally share some of the experiences that we've had in overseeing over 150 different Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship programs in the last 5 years. But at the same time, my experience doing workforce development on the ground, I personally ran workforce development operations for 20 years, trained over 50,000 people in my career, and did several thousand programs of different types, customized training, uh, for companies, partnership programs with nonprofit organizations, with trade associations, programs that directly also enroll from the community. So I did quite a bit of workforce development. So I came to Illinois Works to implement this system for the state, but my true background is being a workforce development practitioner on the ground. So I wanted to share some of the experiences myself, because being a practitioner, I know how important these things are on the ground to ensure things are done correctly, right? So that's the reason why I'm the one, delivering this content, and will be the one delivering this content for the rest of the year. So in terms of the expectations here for this program, we want to today talk about key program characteristics, how these communities of practice work, the role of community of practices within our professional development system at Illinois Works, learn key Illinois Works best practices applicable to the pre-apprentice life cycle. We're going to spend most of our conversation talking about that. What are some of the best practices that you can use, like really practical things that you can use to ensure your programs are successful? Also list the critical plans that require approval. Just want to make sure that the infrastructure for your program is in place. We're going to spend a little bit of time there, not much time. And then describe the components of the coaching plan. Just want to make sure that you really understand how the coaching for Illinois Works works, and also how that relates to this community of practice, okay? Any questions about this? If you have questions, please go ahead and unmute your line and engage. Here are the rules of engagement for this community of practice. First, this is a forum designed to be semi-structured with Q&A and lots of interactions. So please, unmuting your line, asking questions, making comments is very important, because otherwise this is not going to work the way it's intended, okay? It is also important to engage in all the components, including the technological tool in place, which is the LMS, to be able to have a productive community of practice. Having a meeting, this meeting every month for the next few months, it's only part of the community of practice. The other part is engagement in the LMS. And through the LMS, you should be able to share resources, ask questions, make recommendations, and have engagement there. So engagement today, and also engagement technologically through the LMS. Again, the key here, this is about sharing experiences, not only from me to you, but also with each other. As you implement your programs and we continue having these conversations, if there are things that you feel are important for other colleagues in the room to know, please don't hesitate to share them. And also, if there are roadblocks that you have faced that you think it's helpful for people to address, make sure that you also share those, okay? Any questions?
No, I don't have any.
Not right now.
Great. So
Not at this time.
let's put some framework here, okay? What's the accelerator program, right? So the accelerator program, it's really our workforce development incubator at the Illinois Works office, okay? So we run our program with 3 tracks of grantees. And the 3 tracks of grantees are based on their development in doing this type of programming, their experience, their knowledge, their expertise. So most of our grantees operate in what we call track 1. These are programs that have been running these types of programs for many years, some of them for decades. Chicago Women in Trade, IWE at Lewis University. I mean, I can go down and down, right? These are track 1 grantees, lots of experience. It's important that when we go to the regional meeting on the 27th, that you are able to, interact with them, learn from them, right? Then we have what we call track 2 grantees. Track 2 grantees are grantees that either were part of our accelerator program and graduated, and now they're running their program as a track 2 grantee because they develop experience and knowledge, or because they have some knowledge and experience, but still need more development, right? And then we have what we call the track 3 or accelerator program grantees. These are grantees that are fairly new, that are small organizations that may not have the same experience or knowledge or the staffing or the resources as track 2 or track 3 grantees, right? One important thing to keep in mind about accelerator programs is that most, if not all, of our accelerator programs would not traditionally been accepted into our network because they didn't score high enough on their application when the evaluators evaluated the application for them to be part of the network. The only reason why they're part of the network is because we offer them to be part of our incubator and they accepted to be part of the incubator. And as a result, they are part of our network, but they are part of our network as an accelerator program, okay? So it's very important that all the components of the accelerator program and the support that we're providing is really taken advantage by those organizations, because otherwise their development may not be there for them to graduate out of the accelerator program. Accelerator grantees can only be in our accelerator program 2 years. The first year, ideally, they graduate out of it by the time we do renewal, which is October. But if they haven't graduated and we see that they've made important progress, we may offer them to remain in the accelerator program another year. And at the second year, they must graduate out of our accelerator program so that they can move on to track 2, okay? So that's the way the accelerator program works. In a minute, I'll tell you some of the requirements that come along with the accelerator program, but any questions about that introduction to the accelerator program?
No.
No.
Okay, great. So good. So moving on. So if you are an organization identified as a track 3, which you are, right? You apply through the NOFA process, and we made an exception, um, you know, for you to be part of the Illinois Works through the accelerator program. At times, we also put track 2 organizations or track 1 organizations that may not be doing well. We ask them to restructure and then put them as part of the accelerator program. This year, all of the programs in the accelerator pool are new programs that apply through the NOFO process. We do not have previous track 2 or track 1 grantees that we ask them to restructure and then put them in the accelerator program. So all of you are new to the Illinois Works network. So a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about is fairly new to you. Moving on to the next slide. Okay, so what are some of the characteristics of being an accelerator program? Okay, one is you are offered upfront funding, meaning in advance. And we'll talk about those things when we talk about the best practices, the timelines where we are in a minute. Okay, I'm just telling you right now about the characteristics of this program. At the same time, you are required to fully engage to make sure that when you do your onboarding, as you move forward, you really are setting up the foundations correctly from the very beginning, right? You are also funded no more than 2 cohorts a year and no more than 25 participants, right? Now, keep in mind that 25 participants in the Illinois Works Network allows you to over enroll to potentially 20% more than this. So 30 is the max that you can put by over enrolling, but your contract will require a minimum of 25 participants. And you cannot exceed the 25 participants, meaning you could do the over enrollment, but you cannot come back to us and say, oh, oops, I'm ready to do 50. That we will not allow for an accelerator program, because an accelerator program is supposed to be like a pilot program. It's supposed to be like a program you run to learn the system, right? It's a program that allows you to develop knowledge, experience, infrastructure, right? Once you graduate out of your accelerator program, then you could go into running 2 cohorts of 25, 50 people, and then a 20% over enrollment allowance, right? If you're in a track 1 grantee, same thing, right? We have track 1 grantees that actually run multiple sites. Organizations like Higher 360 or Lewis University, we have some other ones, they run multiple sites, right? And that is because they have the experience, the knowledge, the expertise, the staffing to be able to do that type of stuff. But if you are an accelerator program, you're running 1 cohort of 25 or 2 cohorts where you split 25 into 2 cohorts, because we want you to develop the knowledge and the experience, right? Any questions or comments about these characteristics?
No.
No.
Okay, great. Moving on to the next slide. Next slide, Carlene. Okay, so as I mentioned before, this is one of the supports that we provide if you are a track 3 accelerator. And one of the best practices that we're going to talk about today is exactly this: taking advantage of the opportunities to learn, okay? Some people see it as bureaucratic requirements, but I can assure you from the perspective of a workforce development practitioner, that was not the reason why we developed this strategically, okay? We developed this strategically for you to learn not only about Illinois Works, how Illinois Works operates, the processes and procedures, but we developed this to provide support to you, right? So you get intensive coaching. You are all engaged in coaching already with Jeff, okay? That intensive coaching is one-on-one assistance for you to get going with your program, to prep, to address a variety of different requirements, all the angles, right? So that there's nothing that gets missed there, right? This community of practice is all of you coming together, whereas coaching is one-on-one with your staff, with your coach. The community of practice is coming together as a group, learning from us, but also from each other, which is very important, right? You also did your Illinois Works onboarding training, right? And that happened in February and a little bit of part of March. That was intensive training to train you and your staff on a variety of things related to Illinois Works. There are going to be throughout the year different webinars that we put on a monthly basis related to transition services, related to wraparound services, training for instructors, a variety of different webinars, right? Then we have the in-person events. The regional meeting is coming up at the end of May. We will go over a variety of things there, give you updates on where we are in our network technologies. You will get to meet and interact with other grantees and their staff, some of them very experienced that have been doing this for a very long time. Then we do a 2-day conference in the fall. So the regional meeting happens in the spring, the annual conference happens in the fall, and that's a more extensive event, 2-day event. Again, giving you an opportunity to not only learn from each other, learn from your grant managers, but at the same time, it's designed for us to collect feedback about processes, procedures, technology. You would have already by then used our systems, our technology. We want to know from you your experience so that we can then include any improvements we can in our tools and our processes and procedures. There's an informal system that we have called Toolbox Tuesday sessions, and these are monthly lunch and learn events, very interactive, designed to just be very much like a Q&A on a variety of topics, right? And then you get ongoing feedback and monitoring. And this is done basically what we call TA, technical assistance delivered by your grant managers, be it the financial grant managers or the programmatic grant managers. When they start running your compliance reports, they will schedule those TA sessions. Either they can schedule them themselves, or you can call for them to schedule one for you so that you can go over certain things with them, and then they can give you TA on a variety of topics, right? So these are all the professional development and technical assistance opportunities. Best practice here, really engage with this stuff. As I said, Illinois Works is a semi-structured model that uses, that is performance-based, and it uses standards for a lot of areas of our operation. And it's important that you really learn not only the guidance, but also the best practices around that, okay? Any questions about the PD support related to this? Okay, so moving on to the next slide. Okay, so one of the key things related to this program is when it comes to staffing, and I will mention this here because it's something that comes up over and over again. Okay, when you operate an Illinois Works program, there are minimum roles that you need to fulfill because there are a variety of things that have to be done that are compliance related, that are requirements for the program. The question that we always get is transition service coordinators, trainers and instructors, wraparound service coordinators, data entry coordinators. Do I need to have a dedicated staff member on my program just for one of these? Well, the one that needs to be dedicated is transition service coordinators. In your case, because you're an accelerator program running with a cohort size of 25, you need to have a certain FTE. It doesn't have to be a full FTE, but that person needs to be dedicated, right? The other ones, trainers and instructors, if you have trainers and instructors that you're using for other programs or that even work in other programs outside of your own organization, those trainers and instructors can be shared, right? We have grantees that share instructors that are certified, right? NCCR instructors or MC3 instructors or, soft skills instructors that different programs share them, right? They don't have to be dedicated to your program. They do need to be qualified instructors. Wraparound service coordinators, same thing here. If you're running a 25 cohort, you don't need a full-time person. You definitely need someone to play that role for that program. Data entry coordinator, again, you don't need a full-time person, but you need someone dedicated to learn what that role is and be able to do the data entry. In a minute, we're going to talk about staffing and how that may affect your operation. But I've seen cases in smaller programs like yours where the wraparound service coordinator is 50% wraparound service coordinator and 50% data entry coordinator. That's fine, okay? You can certainly do that. It's just that you need to make sure that that person learns the role, gets the training necessary from Illinois Works to effectively do that work. I will tell you, however, I have seen other cases where the data entry is split among 5 people. That does not work. That just doesn't work. In terms of best practice, you need someone that is going to do your data entry and make sure that that person does it well, right? Make sure that there is a data quality management system in place. where another set of eyes is looking at that data that is being entered so that it's accurate, and that when there are issues that come up with your data, that your grant managers, your programmatic grant managers will flag, that those are proactively addressed. We are a performance-based model, meaning until certain metrics are met, we don't release money for you to get paid. And the metrics are enrollment, completion, and transition. All of these metrics require data, right? And if your data entry coordinator role is split among 5 people, the data is not being entered correctly, I can assure you. We have seen cases in the past where grantees try to do that and it just doesn't work. The worst part is that the quality of the data is very scattered. So you definitely need to make sure that these roles are addressed, but they're addressed in a best practice model, right? Not 5 people doing wraparound services, not 3 people doing data entry. That just doesn't work, right? Moving on to the next slide, Carlita.
I believe you had a question, a raised hand.
Okay, please go ahead. Anybody that has any questions, I'll mute your line, and Tamara.
Hi, this is Tamala. So my question would be in regards to the road construction. I each of what I'm learning is that each of the roles have a component of upload that they would have to do, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, in order to move to the next phases in the IWRS. So when you mentioned that when it comes to the data quality, are we doing something wrong when as it relates to like the pre-screening being completed, then passed over to the intake and application person, and then going to the wraparound? But what I'm noticing is that they have to upload certain documents in order to go to the next screen.
Yeah, so what happens with the way Illinois works is set up, and that's how I'm gonna organize the best practices in a minute. It's set up as a life cycle, right? Think about it like a clock, right? It goes from 1 to 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. to 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., and on it goes until it closes, right? And then it starts again. That's what we call the pre-apprentice life cycle. So you start with your leads, right? And your leads, you have to report certain things. Then they apply for the program. There are certain components that are part of that application, right? They have to fill out an application. You need to upload verification that they're high school graduates, or they have a GD or HiSET certificate, right? And then they also have to be 18 years of age, in order to participate, unless you're a high school based program, and none of you are approved to be a high school based program, so they must be 18 years of age. They also need to be an Illinois resident, so you need to prove that, right? You can enroll then the individuals, right? And the enrollment process has certain requirements, right? I mean, it's like interviews have to be conducted. You have to upload that. You know, um, a wraparound assessment has to be done. A career assessment has to be done. So that's like going from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock on the clock, right? And what I'm trying to say here is what I was saying earlier is, if what you're doing is that you're having 5 different people enter the data for all of those stages, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. You need to have a data entry coordinator do that work. You may have a wraparound service provider that provides services, that's fine. A transition service coordinator that does the transitioning, instructors that do the instructing. What shouldn't be happening is that the instructors are entering the attendance roster in IWRS, they're entering the grades in IWRS. The wraparound service person is entering all kinds of information in IWRS. The transition service coordinator is doing the same thing. We've had grantees try that and it doesn't work. And the reason why it doesn't work is because when there is turnover, or when the person forgets to do it, you have all kinds of holes in your data. And your programmatic grant manager, and I don't know who you're working with Depending on where you're located, that may be Monica or Shar or Edwin. They're going to be checking your data on a monthly basis. And then they're going to issue a compliance report, a monthly compliance report for you on a monthly basis. If your data is not accurate and you have not done quality checking on your data, your compliance report is going to have a lot of flags. And if it has flags, we cannot give you enrollment or completion or transition. By having a dedicated data entry coordinator that knows what they're doing in IWRS and having a data quality management system, but you make sure your data is complete, it's accurate, so that by the time your programmatic grant manager does your monthly compliance reporting, which happens the first and second week of the month, they will be able to see data that's there, that is accurate, and then just accept it and on you go, right? And then grant you credit for what you deserve credit for. But when the data is scattered or is missing or the quality is poor, it's impossible to do that, right? I hope I was able to address your question or comment. Okay, so moving on to the next to the next slide. So here's what I really want to spend most of the time, okay? And it is on the best practices. Moving on to the next one, Carlita. We'll come back to the LMS. I want to go to the best practices. Next one. Okay, so let's talk about the best practices. The way we're going to be discussing best practices in this community of practice is what happens before programming, what happens during programming, different stages of programming, what happens after programming, okay? So in terms of best practices, you know, we're talking about before programming now. Most of you have not started your programming because we have a requirement that all accelerator programs need to have their agreement on hand before they can start programming. And I'll give you an update on your agreement in a minute. But I want to discuss some of the things, some of the best practices related to various things before programming, okay? One is onboarding training, okay? I mentioned before that during February and part of March, we do a lot of onboarding training. For the technology, we do a lot of onboarding training related to the grantee manual and the best practices to follow related to that. Some of you were not there, or some of your staff that you have hired since then were not there. It's very important as a best practice that they go to our partner guide, find the recordings for the various things that are applicable to them, and that they take that training. Because if they don't do that, particularly for new staff, they're going to start operating your program in the dark. It's like flying, literally like flying an airplane in the dark without any type of instruments and you don't know where you're headed, okay? So what we find is that when particularly accelerator programs start running their programs in the dark, it's just a matter of time of when an accident will occur with their program. So the best practice here for the onboarding training is for yourself, if you need to review some of the content we cover, particularly related to the grantee manual, some of the content related to IWRS, please have them or yourself go back to those recordings. They're in our partner guide and review that information. That's vital, okay? Very, very important. We have seen in the past that when grantees don't do that and they try to catch up with the knowledge in September or August or October, way too late by then. It's just way too late. The program year is already ending. Now is the time to really catch up, make sure that all the staff is really engaging with it. So I want to stop for a moment here with all the people that are part of the right now of the community of practice. have you or your staff, new staff, had an opportunity to really review this training and engage with it so that you develop a good base of knowledge? So if you could please tell me where you are with that.
This is Tamala from Ascending Knowledge. So yes, while staff is being hired on, I'm passing over the partner resource guide to them and having them go back to the beginning, and also having them register for meetings that have their titles located. I'm also doing additional training where we have professional developments internal, where I'm just showing them how to navigate through the IWRS based off of what I'm learning, and giving them an outline of what the life cycle looks like, with the breakdown as well.
That's good. That's very good, Tamara. I think that if you continue to do that as people come into your team or sometimes they leave and you have replacements, that would ensure that they have a good base of knowledge to go with, right? Our programmatic grant managers can always help close some of those gaps when they have questions or webinars we deliver or lunch and learns or the conferences, but ensuring that they have a base of knowledge is important. So thanks for sharing. Anybody else would like to share how they're ensuring that themselves or their staff, as they hire people, are developing the base knowledge?
Dominic Watson with the Springfield. I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
Dominic, go ahead.
Dominic Watson with the Springfield Project. We've been very intentional as a staff with ensuring that everyone who's currently onboarded is well versed in every position and every process. So, for instance, our wraparound services coordinator knows the job of our data entry and vice versa, and just ensuring that everyone knows every step. And then obviously we've been tasking and allowing individuals who have certain job descriptions to do their job, but also just trying to ensure that everyone knows all the moving parts. I think the biggest thing that I've seen that I need guidance on would be I've noticed that as it relates to the learning management system, the staff isn't assigned to their respective trainings. But as it relates to the other trainings, I've been having all staff go to, even if it's not relevant to their position. And then I myself have been trying to attend various trainings as well. And then as it relates to onboarding of our instructors, that's probably been the biggest thing that we have to refine, just because we haven't hired our instructors, just because we didn't know when they would. We didn't want to incur the additional costs to pay them as they're being onboarded without the idea of when we may be able to start.
Okay, great. So with regards to the LMS, Dominic, so that there will be some more LMS training during the regional meeting on the 27th, okay? And we're going to address a lot of the LMS situations there during that event. But thanks for the feedback. Anybody else would like to add about how they're ensuring that they're onboarding and their staff is onboarding and they're learning everything about Illinois Works?
Certainly. This is Melissa Brown with Eaton. Our team for the pre-apprenticeship program was in place before the first training. So starting in January, we've attended all of the trainings as a team, and they've also been involved in their individual training. Also, our fiscal host, who is the accounting department, when we did the financial workshops, we had the accountants who are going to actually be working with the materials and producing the backup to attend so that they could get their questions answered firsthand. And then with the Absorb LMS, we have kind of a special situation because with another program we do here, I actually was the administrator on Absorb setting it up. So I do have some firsthand knowledge that I've been able to help our team to navigate throughout.
That's great. That's great. I am very excited to hear that when it comes to This particular best practice that you are all being proactive about it, I always use, and apologies if I use a lot of analogies in my conversation and presentation. I used to be a college professor, so I found that for a lot of my students, the analogies really work well. And I will use an analogy here related to both administrative onboarding and then training onboarding. And that is, you know, when you put a train on the track correctly from the very beginning, it can run on that track for thousands and thousands of miles. And in fact, it can get to its destination. But when the train is not put on the track correctly, it will derail. The question is when, right? And that is what we're trying to do with this training. And then I'm going to talk about the administrative onboarding in a minute, trying to put you on the track correctly from the very beginning. It may be that the train may experience some challenges and go a little slowly in certain places, or the engine fails and another engine needs to be brought so that the train continues to get to its destination, but it will not derail, right? It's when the train is on the tracking correctly that the train is very likely, most likely, going to derail and cause a lot of problems, right? So that's what we're trying to do with this onboarding. And that's why I encourage you. The important key here when it comes to onboarding training is sustaining that, right? And if staff comes in, new staff, or if changes happen in your team, always make sure that that new staff, or when you make changes in the staffing, that they get that baseline knowledge, because otherwise they're going to be, you know, flying the plane in the dark, and it's just a matter of time before they hit something, right? So, so that's the practice there. But I'm happy to hear that. Now, when it comes to the administrative onboarding, so there are two types of onboarding that you do with Illinois Works. One is the training, right? The second one is the administrative onboarding. And in a minute, I'll discuss our grantee manual, okay? But the administrative onboarding is designed to set up all the programmatic infrastructure that you need in order for your grant manager to say you're clear to proceed, right? Meaning, we know you have a plan on how to put staff together. We know you have a marketing plan on how you're going to recruit people. We know that you have, you know, I don't know, you have a plan on how you're going to do data management, right? All of that is just ensuring that you are being proactive to set that infrastructure in place, right? Because without that infrastructure, you may be very good at enrolling people, or, you know, outreaching and recruiting people, but not very good at delivering a curriculum, right? Or maybe not very good at doing data entry, or not very good at doing transition services. So that's what that administrative onboarding focuses on, right? Ensuring that you're setting up the proper infrastructure, that you have the plans. Now, those plans then go along with the coaching that Jeff is giving you to make sure that you're operationalizing those plans, right? It's not good to have a plan that is good on paper if it cannot be properly operationalized, right? So the best practice when it comes to administrative onboarding is not only completing those documents, but more importantly, making sure that you operationalize those, okay? I got to tell you, we've had, as I said, we've had 150 different grantees in Illinois Works. You know, I've done, you know, workforce development for 20 years and dealt with hundreds of partners in my career. And what's always fascinating is that when something goes wrong, you hear grantees saying, "Oh, I didn't know that I was supposed to do that." Well, you know, by the time we come October or November, that is not a good reason for failing, right? Because we are putting everything up front in terms of knowledge, in terms of that this infrastructure for you to know what needs to be done, and you're coaching to operationalize this stuff so that come October, November, it shouldn't be I didn't know that we were supposed to do that, right? So the best practice here with administrative onboarding is you have plans that have been approved by your programmatic grant manager make sure they get operationalized as planned, right? That is the best practice there. Any comments or questions related to that?
Not right now.
Okay, great.
I do.
Yes, go ahead, please. Please go
Do
ahead.
have one. And this is, and you may discuss it later when you say where our grants are, because this is Melissa. We've turned in everything to our grant manager, but our original work plan start date, of course, is passed. And so we do have a tentative start date, but we're not sure if that's going to work until we know when the countersign agreement's going to show up. So I don't know if you have an update on that.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to speak to next.
Okay.
But it's an excellent point. That's where the rubber meets the road for a program, right? When do I have my agreement? When can I start? So let's talk about that a little bit, okay? So before I talk about your grant agreement, it's very important that we talk about budgeting, okay? So when it comes to budgeting, newer organizations that have not worked with the state yet, or that may have some experience with the state, will find these processes to be complicated. And they are, right? I mean, as I said, I did all kinds of funding in my career, federal funding, state funding, county funding, city funding. I mean, it's just, they all have different systems. And there is no question that they're all challenging, right? But what's important to know about budgeting, there are two key things, best practices related to budgeting. Budgeting at the state level is what really delays grant agreement. People see this as two separate things, but in fact, budgeting is the precursor to grant agreement. The longer a budget takes to finalize and make sure that it aligns with the requirements of the state and of the program, the longer the grant agreement takes. In fact, without a finalized and approved budget, we're not even allowed to start a grant agreement process in our systems. So as a result, I've had smaller grantees. Larger grantees know this because they've been doing this forever, millions of dollars 20 years later, right? But I had smaller grantees say, yeah, I'm still working through my budget, but where is my grant agreement? I even had a grantee in the past say, unless you give me a grant agreement, I'm not going to finalize my budget. And it's very simple. Without a final and approved budget, our financial grant managers cannot even start a grant agreement, okay? It's that simple. Here's the other thing, okay, that is very important. We prioritize in our financial grant management process accelerator program. We work with them intensely to finalize those budgets, okay? Even then, and we provided some workshops this year, it took 4, 5, sometimes 6 months to finalize those budgets, okay? But we prioritize the accelerators. If your GATA status is not appropriate, even if we have an approved budget, we cannot issue a grant agreement. For instance, if you get put on a FENLOC because of an audit or because you didn't update something in GATA, we may have an approved budget, we simply cannot issue a grant agreement. So think about grant agreement as the last part of a process that takes several steps. First step is budget. Second step is, are we clean on your GATA, status with the state of Illinois? Third step, we issue the grant agreement and it gets executed, okay? So the best practice I can tell you when it comes to budgeting is this. If you get offered a renewal in October, make sure that you start working on your budget very proactively and make sure that your budget follows the principles of your previous year's approved budget. Because here's what I have seen, okay? We get through the process of approving a budget, finalized them. They might have been 15 flags on the budget. They were all addressed. And then the next year comes and the grantee submits a budget. They redid the whole budget. And guess what? Instead of following the principles of their previously approved budget, now they submit a budget that now has another 15 flags. So we have to start the process all over again to clear up those flags. Where I used to work, and I used to do workforce development for a college, we always use the previous year's approved budget as the template. And then we made some changes to it, to that approved budget. And typically they were minor changes. And guess what? We never had any problems with our budgets having flags or delaying the approval, because we use the previous year approved budget as the baseline. That's very important, okay? But anyways, that's for the future if you get offered renewal. Your budgets now have all been approved, okay? For all of you that are here today, we have 4 grantees here on the line. 75% of you have been going through the grant agreement process without any problems. One of you had an issue with a FINLAC that caused delays, right? And the problem with FINLAC delays, so that you know, okay, and this is important again, if you're fairly new doing business with the state, we have zero control over those FINLACs. Those FINLACs have to be addressed by other parties. We are just waiting. Even if you have an approved budget, the only thing we do is that in our weekly financial planning meetings, if you're the one stuck with a FINLAC, we just have you there, sitting there on our priority list and find out what's going on with you. Or sometimes we may be with you so that you clean up whatever needs to be done so that we can proceed. But there is nothing that we can do about those FINLACs. Our program cannot go and remove those FINLACs. For whatever reason you were put on FINLAC, that needs to be addressed with whomever you need to address that, so that, you know, it doesn't impact your program. I'll give you an example that I have seen. One is, maybe you didn't submit a report, a PFR, to DHS or some other state department, state of Illinois department, that your agency that you're working with, they put you on a FINLAC. There's nothing we can do about it, because the FINLAC is for your GATA profile, which impacts your funding with all state agencies. Until you clear that issue with them, we cannot do anything about it. Any questions or comments about that? So here's the best practice related to this. Make sure that your GATA portal is always active, doesn't have any issues. You're not in a FINLAC, okay? Very, very important. And it comes to budgeting, making sure that you're very proactive to addressing budgeting flags that your financial grant manager might have given you is vital, right? Because otherwise, until those flags are addressed, that budget cannot be approved. And if that budget cannot be approved, your grant agreement cannot even be started, okay?
Hey, Norman.
Yes.
Quick. Sorry, we have 2 questions. So it's like Tamala has a question, and also I believe Melissa wants to.
Okay, go ahead, Tamala and Melissa.
Hi, Dan. Thank you for explaining that so detailed to us in regards to the process. My question would be, if we've already signed our grant agreement, do you have a timeline as to when we will receive our, if we apply for an advance, do you have a timeline as to when we will receive that advance?
So I will address that in the next best practice when it comes to the grant agreement. So if you don't mind, I'll respond to that in a minute, because that's the next item.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Someone else had a question?
Well, no, I wanted to share a best practice. This is Melissa Brown. So that others don't go through what we went through, because we had the former executive director leave, and we lost access to our SAM account. And so for all organizations, when you're creating that, don't let the person tie the authentication to their personal login, because that's tied to their social security account and everything, and you can't recover that to do just a standard two-person authentication or use an authentication app, because we went through a couple of things to get access to our SAM again. So I just want to let everybody know, especially with leadership, how people are setting up passwords and how the organization has access to recover those accounts is significant.
That's an excellent point, Melissa. I really appreciate you sharing with the rest of your colleagues here. But this is exactly what I mean. And I'm going to use another analogy. I told you I like analogies. Think about this as an expressway, right? And the expressway has two barriers, right? For you to be able to start going at 100 miles an hour if you want, you have to go through two barriers. The first barrier is the budget. The second barrier is the grant agreement. However, very important, keep this in mind. If in fact, your SAMS account or your GADA portal is not open, even when you go through those standard barriers, that expressway is still closed for you. You cannot start running your program on that expressway. It's just not possible, because GATA is what really opens the gates for everything. Even if you have a grant agreement, even if you're doing great on your program, you will not be able to get paid. We cannot pay you anything if your GATA portal is locked. So it's important that your GATA portal becomes something that you're constantly looking at to make sure that you're active, right? That it's active, that doesn't have any flags. And as I said, most of those flags in that GATA portal are not ours. We cannot address them. Some of them are, but most of them are not. The ones that are ours, our grant managers will work with you and address, but most of those are outside of our control, okay? But let's talk about grant agreements, because ultimately that's what really matters. The first barrier to enter the highway was budget. Let's assume for right now that you don't have any issues with your GATA portal. What's going on with your grant agreement? As I mentioned earlier, we prioritize your grant agreements, okay? Now you should know, again, as I said, this is state of Illinois. Obviously, there is a bureaucratic process to be followed for everything. It takes 4 to 6 weeks for a grant agreement to be executed. Once we have an approved budget and we were allowed to enter your grant agreement in our systems, okay, 4 to 6 weeks. Most of your grant agreements are already in the last stages of that process of the 4 to 6 weeks. Melissa, I think, was the one that mentioned that you have already signed the grant agreement. That is great news, because that's one of the last steps. But after you sign that grant agreement, it needs to go to our director's office, which is the director of DCEO, to do the final execution of the grant agreement. Those are the last steps. Once she does the final execution of the grant agreements, then goes back to our fiscal team, our finance team, that it then sets up the accounts for you to be able to get paid once you submit your expenses, right? So there are still a couple of steps after you sign that grant agreement. But if you have already received your grant agreement, you are already in the last stages. What happens once fiscal receives your grant agreement? It's all executed. They set up the accounts. At that point, then our financial grant managers can then start requesting payments for a grantee. And those payments typically come in two different ways, right? One is an advance. And I imagine all of you, because you're part of the accelerator program, have an advance request on record, okay? So as soon as your grant agreement is executed, our financial grant managers will then request your advance to be paid, okay? That advance has to go through a process. It typically will take, after it gets requested, it typically takes about 2 to 3 weeks for you to actually receive the money from the comptroller's office. So I'll address that issue of the controller's office in a minute, okay? But that's how that process works, right? So how many of you have received already your agreement from us for you to sign?
I have. The Springfield project has.
Spark 618 has.
Yeah,
Ascending Knowledge has.
Okay,
yeah, we have received ours. This is Eden. We've received and signed and returned.
okay, good. So that means that, so remember how I said we prioritize accelerator programs? So the system worked for you. We're right now in the middle of May. I could imagine that, and we have a planning meeting scheduled next week, that your agreements are now either in, in the last couple of stages of the process or in the last stage of the process. So very soon, you're going to see that finally executed agreement that includes your signature and our director's signature. And then at that point, obviously in our weekly planning, our financial grant managers will be asked to execute your advance payments. Okay. So this is coming soon. Okay. Very soon, and that will impact then your revised work plans to submit to your programmatic grant manager so that you can proceed to execute your programming, right? But that's where we are right now with the grant agreement. Any questions or comments related to that?
Tamla had her hands that was up. Tamla.
Pamela, any questions or comments?
I just wanted to give another best practice in regards to the GATA. What I do is I set alerts up on my calendar at least twice a month to go onto my GATA to ensure that there's no discrepancies, specifically because I was one of the grantees that kind of had a hiccup with my SAMs in the process of me being approved for my budget. So now I make it a point to go into the GATA system at least twice a month to make sure that there's no discrepancies.
Excellent, Tamala. That's an excellent best practice. Here's one thing I will tell you, particularly because most of you are smaller organizations. Larger organizations, colleges, some of the larger providers that we have, they have full teams of financial managers, right? That are constantly doing what you just described, Melissa, right? They check their data to make sure there are no issues. Flags get issued on their budgets, they address them quickly. Their grant agreements, they turn them around quickly, right? Because that's what they do. That's their full-time job. But smaller organizations that don't necessarily have that, the practices that Melissa mentioned, I think are important. A reminder, on your computer, give you a reminder, Outlook, at least once a month, check your data portal. Why? Because again, even if the hurdle is out, budget is out, you got one approved, your grant agreement is out, you got that approved, um, you need to make sure that it stays open. It's the GATA portal that needs to stay open, because if it doesn't, we cannot execute a payment for you because the GATA portal is locked and we cannot execute payment. Someone made a comment about Tamala and Melissa. Apologies if I'm mixing your names, okay? Um, but anyways, here's a best practice for your grant agreement. Make sure that when you receive it, all of you received it, you signed it and send it back quickly, right? So that doesn't cause any delays in us processing the next steps on the grant agreement. Any other questions or comments related to the grant agreement?
Melissa Brown has a question.
Melissa, you had another comment or question?
Well, yes. And I know you may not be able to say specifically from your experience, because we've already returned our signed agreements, would they be executed by the end of the month? And the reason I'm asking is our new work plan date, we're thinking of starting June 9th. And I'm not sure if that is a good date. And I'm just trying to, just find out from past experience, should we be planning for later in June as a start date?
So, I will respond your question in two ways. One is, From a practical perspective and how long the process takes, yes, that looks like a reasonable timeline to use. Okay. From a technical internal perspective of the steps, I need to consult with our financial grant managers next week when we meet for planning to find out where we are in those steps, right? Because from a practical perspective, yes, 3 weeks certainly looks completely doable. It takes 4 to 6 weeks from the start of the grant agreement process to get it approved. But you guys are already in the last stages of it, right? In the last 2, 3 steps of it. So it looks definitely reasonable, but I will check to see where they are, and then we can send out an email about that, okay?
Thank you.
Yep. Let me just make a note here. Okay, now let's talk about payments. So someone was asking about payments, right? And then I'll deal with the staffing and participant leads. But someone's talking about payments. Once I get my grant agreement, when will I get my payments? So keep in mind, and I said I'll speak about the controller's office. And once again, going back to the complexity of state government and its bureaucracies, right? So when it comes to payments, we issue a payment only after expenses are certified. When you're talking about PFRs, when you're talking about advances, these are automatic transactions, right? Meaning your grant agreement is executed, we issue a transaction for the advance, right? And then once we issue the transaction, it gets approved. The controller's office then takes it over. It takes about, sometimes they pay it as early as 1 week. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks for them to pay it. And, you know, as long as you set up everything with the controller's office to be paid, then that payment will come through, right? That is not the way typical payments go with the state of Illinois, though. Just want to make sure that we're clear about that. The advance is an automatic transaction. When it comes to payments on a monthly basis, when you submit your PFRs, we need to first be able to certify expenses. And our financial grant managers will review your PFRs, review the backup that you submit, and let you know if there are any flags with those, right? You need to clear those flags because otherwise those flags are stopping from us proceeding to certify expenses. They may flag something as being not an allowable expense. They may flag something as you not having the appropriate backup information. Whatever their flag is, those need to be addressed because then they need to certify expenses. Once your expenses are certified, they're going to compare those expenses to your REMAX. Have you heard about that term before, the REMAX? Any of you, have you heard about what a REMAX is? Okay, Melissa says she hasn't heard it, so I imagine that most of you have not heard REMAX. Okay, so Illinois works as a performance-based model, right? Remax is the amount of money that you unlock with your performance. So let's take, for instance, enrollment, because you guys will start with your enrollment. When you enroll people and you follow the enrollment process as outlined in the grantee manual, and it's important that you really follow the guidance in the grantee manual, right? You know, for enrollments, the person needs to have completed an application. The person needs to be 18 years of age or older. The person needs to have a high school diploma or a GED or a high SES certificate. The person needs to be an Illinois resident, right? You know, the person needs to have done an interview and interview scores uploaded. You know, they needed to do a wraparound service assessment. They need to do a career assessment. When all of those things are completed, your grant manager every month is going to go into each of your students and verify that, right? And they will either say verified or not verified. If they say verified for all of those items for a particular individual, they release money, enrollment money for that individual into your REMAX account. Remax then is the dollar amounts that your programmatic grant manager released into your Remax account based on your performance. Sometimes, they will review an enrollment for a particular individual, and let's say one thing is there but not really done the way it's supposed to be. They may give you a conditional enrollment on that individual, still release money into your Remax account, but it's conditional on you addressing one or two flags, right? Or sometimes they just give you a full enrollment, it's full verification, is not conditional. You did everything you needed to do, it's good, and your Remax account has the money. So that's the reason why I was saying before, you need to have a data quality management system in place. What does that mean? You need another set of eyes looking at the data that your data entry coordinator enters so that you can catch those things and fix them before your programmatic grant manager gets to it. Because if you catch it and fix it, you can then, when the programmatic grant managers reviews it, they can verify that and they just put money into your Remax account. We can see in the system when people, you could clearly see in the system when people operate with a good quality management system, because you could see the corrections. We can see in the system the corrections that they're making to their data, okay? If you don't do that, your programmatic grant manager is going to catch it, and then it's going to issue a bunch of flags for that particular individual that need to be addressed before they can release money into your Remax account. So the Remax is the amount of money that you released from your performance that was verified by the grant manager and that was released into your Remax account. So we typically pay, I think it's about $3,000 per individual for enrollment. Let's assume that you had 25 enrollees and 20 of them, they were able to release Remax. Well, then you have $60,000 in your Remax, right? And let's assume that your expenses for that month through your PFR, the expenses that were certified are $40,000. They'll compare your certified expenses to your Remax and immediately issue a payment for those $40,000. Why? Because your Remax is at the same level or higher than your certified expenses. And on you go. They do the same thing for completions, they do the same thing for transitions, and then they release money. And then there's also closeout. They release money into your Remax account based on your performance. And as you submit your expenses and we certify them, we compare where your certified expenses are in comparison to your Remax, and that's how they issue payments. Any questions about that? Or comments? Dominic or Aaron, Melissa,
No.
Pamela.
No, I just
Okay.
want to say that's super helpful. I know I heard that process before, but hearing it again, that was just super helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And so what you want to do, remember what I said before, and let's go on to the next slide, Carlita, if you don't mind, because it's gonna come up here. In staffing, remember how I said your data entry coordinator needs to really do a good job in data entry. And if you have 4 or 5 people doing data entry, I can assure you there's gonna be issues with your data. Well, your data entry coordinator that is part of your staff is really carrying your ability to get verifications and as a result, get Remax deposited into your account, right? Because by entering the required data and doing it correctly, that's how you unlock that process. So I really encourage you to have a good data entry coordinator that is very focused on details, that is trained, that can follow the guidance, okay? So let me just emphasize something here, okay? We had a program, not a large organization. They're a fairly small organization, but they're very good at what they do, okay? Their data, impeccable. They always operate with very high compliance levels. They get renewed year after year, year after year, year after year. And I asked the program administrator there, what was her secret? What was her key? And she says, I'm going to tell you exactly what she told me. She says, I print a copy of the grantee manual. And she says, I put it in a binder. And every single time I have a question or a concern, I go and read that manual. And she says, it's all marked up. I have post-its everywhere. You look at my binder, it looks like fireworks. But she says, that's how I make sure that we do a good job. Because I read the manual, read a sentence, read a paragraph. If I have questions, I request TA from my programmatic grant manager for them to explain. But she says, I made it a point to understand that grantee manual from page 1 all the way to the end. And that's her secret to her success. So I would encourage you to do the same thing, okay? Because the grantee manual not only has guidance, but it also has a lot of resources, and it also has a lot of best practices. So I would encourage you and would recommend that you do that, okay? When it comes to staffing, I want to emphasize now in structures, okay? In a workforce development model, and then with that we'll end and just give you a couple of words on leads and also coaching, and then we'll circle back to the other things when we meet again in June. But when it comes to staffing, instructors play a very important role, okay? In workforce development, the rubber meets the road on the instructional piece, okay? Your participants need to successfully complete their certifications. They need to successfully be trained to enter an apprenticeship program. And an apprenticeship program is an instructional program. It's just that they're working at the same time as they're going to learn, right? Having qualified, certified instructors that can actually deliver instruction is going to be key, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult for your participants to successfully complete the program. Completers of Illinois Works have to pass every single module in your curriculum, and they have to attend a certain level, right? If they don't do those two things, they're not going to be successful. They won't be considered completers, and your instructors are very instrumental in making that happen. It cannot be the afterthought of your program. It needs to be one of the strategic parts of your program, okay? There are some very good instructors out there. I've dealt with instructors for almost 30 years now. Some instructors that are dedicated, focused, that really know what they're doing. Those are the people that you want for your program, okay? Be it that you're working with NCCR curriculum or MC3 curriculum, those are the types of instructors that you want. Don't put just anybody in the classroom. That's where the rubber meets the road in a workforce development program, particularly in the Illinois Works model, okay? Any questions or comments about that?
No, sir.
Okay, great. Your coach, Jeff, can definitely help with some of those practices if you run into issues with instructors that are qualified, okay? Let's talk about a couple of things quickly, and then we'll close it, and we'll talk about when the next meeting will be of this community of practice. Participant leads, okay? Let me just tell you, this is one area, once you receive your agreement and you start running your program, where you have to be very careful. Illinois Works is a performance-based model. So for us, it's not just where we start, more importantly is where we end. Outcomes is the name of the game for Illinois Works. I've seen from experience with a lot of our grantees that they rush to accept people into their programs, and then there's a mismatch between what this program is and what those individuals actually want to do with their careers, okay? I've seen people accept individuals that want to be chefs into their programs. Individuals that want to be chefs should not be accepted into a construction program. And then I hear all kinds of things. Yeah, but they really need the stipend, but they really need the wraparound services. Well, the problem with that is that you're not going to get an outcome out of that individual. And this program is outcome based. So if you accept individuals that are there for other reasons, but to enter the trades and make a career in the trades, you are not likely to receive an outcome not only are you jeopardizing your program's ability to be successful, your ability to get renewed, we're wasting a lot of resources that are dear and that are limited for people that do want to make a career in construction and the trades. Think about this. There's a lot of pre-med programs out there, right? Think about people being accepted and running in a pre-med program, but what they actually want to do is become, I don't know, corporate finance professionals. Why should they be accepted into a pre-med program? Pre-med programs are only for people that want to be medical doctors. That's it. Nobody should be accepted in a pre-med program if what they want to be is a lawyer. Nothing wrong with being a lawyer. They should go in a pre-law program. That's great. They want to be lawyers. They want to be, I don't know, chefs. They want to be, you know, corporate finance professionals. That's all great. They should not be in a pre-med program. It's the same thing here, right? The only reason to accept someone into a construction pre-apprenticeship program is because they desperately want to be construction professionals and they want to go into a DOL registered apprenticeship program. I always use this case because it's such an extreme case that, I mean, it broke my heart when I read about it. We had a grantee, track 3 grantee, who was operating in an area of the state that was in a lot of need, right? And they accepted 3 individuals, 3 young men, into our program on the premise, supposedly, that they wanted to go into construction and the trades. They went through the whole process. The 3 got accepted into the plumber's apprenticeship program, which, by the way, the plumbers are the trade that pays the highest in the state of Illinois. And the 3 declined to join the apprenticeship program. So I saw that in our system, and then I called the program administrator and I said, please, you're going to have to do some explaining to me here. These 3 individuals got accepted into the most important and the best paid apprenticeship program in the state, and they all declined to participate. Please explain to me. And his response was, well, you know, we always knew they didn't want to do a career in construction and the trades, but they come from, you know, they're just needy. They really needed access to wraparound service. They needed access to the stipend, so we accepted them. I'm still talking about that case, as you can see. Anybody would like to comment about that? Any comments about that situation?
I have a comment, Dr. Rowano. So I just want to share a best practice that I'm using as I prepare our members to go into the Illinois Work Pre-Apprenticeship training. I've invited, when it's time for them to do the interviews, I actually use a trainer to come over to sit with our members to interview them. And I feel like that works because me personally, I don't know a lot about the construction field and what it entails. And so I feel like the trainer can explain a little bit more about what our members are getting into.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent practice. I thank you very much for sharing, Tamala, because you know you see it on my slide. Participant leads mismatch, and mismatch means that, right? Accepting people into a program that they shouldn't be. And sure, we recognize the need that people have, and if they want to do something else with their careers, they should be referred to another program. But by accepting them into our program and failing to deliver outcomes, we do 2 things, okay? One is we wasted 30,000 people on those 3 individuals. Not only that, we jeopardize the sustainability of this program, right? Because this program is there to support people, whoever they are, women, minorities, veterans, to enter construction in the trades. If that's not what we're doing, we're jeopardizing the future sustainability of a program that is very generous and that really wants to help people, right? So I appreciate you sharing. That is a great point. Dominic, I think you wanted to mention something.
So
Victor, I think
we got three
yeah.
hands up. We got three hands up, Norman.
Okay.
I think Melissa's first.
Thank you. So one of the things that we did probably about a month ago is hosted a trade career discovery day, and we invited all the local trades and labor councils and representation to participate. And we kind of had kind of a small open house, and we also invited developers who were working on various projects that were going to employ individuals in the trades for years to come. And it was really a great turnout. Elected officials showed up, and we probably had about 100 people in the room. And I would say from there, we probably got about 30 applicants who were present and directly interested, because again, they were able to interact with individuals who were both retired and active in the trades and labor organizations, respectively.
That's great. That's a great practice. Thanks for sharing, Dominic. And I would encourage the other organizations to do something similar, because they encounter the career, the professionals right there and then, right? Some of them may say, I'm not interested in this after doing that, and that's fine. And some of them say, yeah, this is really what I want to do, right? So great practice. Thanks for sharing. I think Melissa also had her hand up.
Yeah, just two things I'd like to share. What we also did is have our director of HR of our organization, because some of the team members had not participated in formal interview processes before, to do a training for the team about what the process looks like, how, even though the questions are prescribed, how to help interviewees to be more comfortable and to really kind of hear unmet needs or unanswered, so that they could follow up correctly. And then we also don't schedule the same two people, so that we can get kind of a really good overview of what people are thinking. And how Dominic mentioned his discovery day, we also have had about 50 people complete applications, and we've already completed about 35 interviews, some scoring higher. But those that we're looking to admit prior to enrollment day, we're going to kind of have a discovery day here, where they can get used to the environment, and we can get to know them a little bit better in a more informal, so that they really know what they're signing up for.
That is great. That is great. So those are all great practices. And I will tell you, the interview process is very important, because it's designed to filter out individuals that don't want to make a career in construction and the trades. And I will say, as I said, I'm a practitioner. We come across people that certainly have a lot of need, and we come across people that need services or that want to do other programs. As I said, a pre-law student, then they should be referred to a pre-law program. Same case with us. You come across people that, they want to join because of the supportive services, or they want to do other programs. They should be referred to other services. But Illinois Works is not for that, right? Illinois Works is for individuals that match that, right? They really want to make a career in construction and the trades, and we want to support them. And it's a generous program, but that's the only reason why they should be accepted into the program, because they really want to make a career in construction and the trades. I think I'm going to leave it at that. This community of practice generally was originally intended to run on a quarterly basis, but given where we are and how things are going, I think we're going to make it a monthly meeting. Expect to hear from us and give you links to enroll in the middle of June. We're going to have another community of practice meeting. And by then, we're going to come back to coaching, curriculum, facilities. We're going to talk, because by then you're going to be starting your programming. We're going to talk about some of the best practices when it comes to programming, some of the things that we've seen that work very well. during programming. Okay, so I hope that works for all of you. It certainly has been a good interactive conversation with you, which is the way I intended this to be, right? For us to share with each other, for us to, hear from what you're doing, for us to learn from each other so that you can be successful. I hope you have found this to be productive for your time and for your efforts.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so
So
much.
much.
This
Uh,
is a wonderful training. Thank you so much, sir.
We
yeah,
do
no
have
problem.
an
It's my
evaluation now.
pleasure. My pleasure. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Olston now, who's going to do a quick evaluation. As you know, we need to evaluate our programming so that we know what to improve or not. But go ahead, Cardita, with the evaluation. I will be dropping out, but I really appreciate you joining us, and we'll let you know when the next meeting is. Thanks for joining. Okay, take care.
Thank you, Dr. Urano. So what I'd like for you to do, if you can, if you are able to scan the QR code, that will take you directly into the evaluation. However, what we want you to do is look on your right side of your screen, and there's a blue button that says continue. Go ahead and click that, and it should take you into it. And I do believe that the link will be shared in the chat in the event that those two options do not work. So while you're trying to get in, I'm going to bring up our evaluation piece. All right, you should be able to see that on your screen. Can everyone see that introduction to the evaluation?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good, thank you. And I do want to say thank you guys for staying throughout the entire meeting. This was a lot of good information, but we do want to find out your feedback on it. So we're going to ask you to go ahead and respond to the questions using the multimedia viewer that you have, and share your views on this meeting by rating the following statements between 1 and 10. To what extent did it meet your expectations? How likely are you to attend a similar event in the future? And how likely are you to recommend this community practice to others? Okay, I do see one person who responded. I'll give you a few minutes so that everybody has a chance to respond. Is there anyone having difficulty with Mentimeter before we go on to the next slide? Okay, let's move on to the next slide. The meeting was relevant to what I wanted to learn about this subject matter. From strongly agree to strongly disagree, or somewhere in the middle. I'm driving to another meeting, so I'm not able to scan the QR code. I hear you. Right?
Yeah.
Give you a few more seconds to, this meeting was relevant to what I wanted to learn about the subject matter. Go ahead and make your selection on the multi-viewer. There we go. I see one person. Thank you for that. Anyone else still on the line? I'm not able to see who all is still
We only have two
available.
people on the line. Oh, well, Aaron just left. Tamla's the only one now left.
Okay,
And we have
Tamara, can I just run through the rest of these questions with you?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. I plan to apply what I learned. All right, what improvements might you recommend? All right, and then what did you find effective? If we make any changes, what would you like for us to keep? I take it you're typing.
Yes, I am.
Very good. The engagement with Dr. Ruano was helpful. Excellent. Thank you so much for that comment. Is there anything else about this course you think we should know? You want it to go longer? Is that what I understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Really?
So
Can you
many
elaborate on
questions.
that?
It's just, I mean, he's very informative. I wrote down about 6 questions that I wanted to ask him. So just giving a little time towards the end to do like an
Mhm.
overall Q&A and give more feedback.
Can you go ahead and type that overall Q&A piece in there? Because that's what we will follow up on. Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, we want to thank you for staying on and finishing out this evaluation. This is very helpful information for us, and we want you to have a great day. Take care.
Thank you. God bless.
God
Thank you
bless
so
you.
much. Thanks, everyone.
So before you hang up, where'd you go? You
I'm
still
right
there?
here. I was just stopping the recording.
Oh, it was still recording?
Oh, yes.